Yeah, so I've been asked to speak on autoimmune dry eye. No financial disclosures here. So basically, when you're talking of autoimmune dry eye, I'll be restricting myself to primary or secondary Sjogren's. Now, these are eyes where you will normally have an associated Sika syndrome. You might have an associated chronic fatigue. You might have systemic involvement where it becomes a secondary Sjogren's syndrome. So the most important thing when you are looking at a dry eye patient is a detailed history. You need to ask them whether they have dryness in the eyes, whether they have dryness in the mouth, whether they have joint pains, any skin rashes, any drug history, any weight loss, cough, hemoptysis, any issues with any neurological dysfunction. So history taking is very important. Based on your history, you will have some idea if there's any systemic issue with the patient, and you need to evaluate the patient more. Coming to the clinical diagnosis, at this point of time, the primary Sjogren's, according to the European and the American consensus, is based on the salivary flow, the abnormal Schirmer's less than 5, the lissamine or the fluorescein staining more than 5, an anti-Ro, and a histology. But of all the ocular findings, they gave only one point to both the Schirmer's and the fluorescein staining. So unless you actually do a biopsy or you do a blood test for a Ro or an SSA, and that becomes positive, it will become a little bit difficult for you to actually label it by yourself to say that it is a primary Sjogren's. If you have any of the blood investigations which is positive in terms of other collagen vascular diseases, and you have a dry eye and a dry mouth, it becomes easier. So the best way would actually be to refer these patients. If you have a very low Schirmer's, you have significant corneal staining, and you have a history of dry mouth, it is better to refer the patients across to a rheumatologist, let them do a detailed evaluation, and then they will give you a diagnosis whether it is a primary Sjogren's or it is a secondary Sjogren's. When you're looking at secondary Sjogren's, even though ophthalmologically we probably see a lot more of RA patients with secondary Sjogren's, if you ask the rheumatologist, they will say that SLE is more commonly associated with secondary Sjogren's, with almost about 36% patients developing secondary Sjogren's. Again, you have to exclude other cases and exclude any other potential disease which could be a masquerade. So why do you need to be aware of this, and what you want to do when a patient comes to you? Obviously, just using a drop of fluorescein on the eye gives you a staining pattern, and this tells you that the dryness is much more severe than the routine computer vision syndrome, and you need to take this patient a little bit more seriously. Again, a fluorescein test will tell you not just the staining pattern, it will tell you the amount of tears with respect to the tear meniscus. It tells you how much the tears flow as the lid blinks. That gives you an indirect assessment about the amount or severity of the aqueous deficiency, even if you don't have the newer diagnostic tools to estimate the TMH in terms of millimeters. You would need to have a rheumatological consultation, even if you are basically trying to see if these patients require cataract surgery or any other intraocular procedure, because you need to be clear that your surgery is not going to cause them any problems in their postoperative period. So this patient, I'll go through certain cases. This patient presented to the OPD with decrease in vision in the right eye, and she wanted cataract surgery. The right eye looked reasonably okay clinically. The fluorescein staining was also not bad. The meniscus was also good. But look at the other eye. The other eye has a much worse staining. The tear meniscus is on the lower side. And if you look at her hands, they show deformities of chronic RA. So it is important to examine the patient systemically. Any patient with a dry eye, specifically look at the joints, ask them the history for you to come to a diagnosis as to what could be the cause for their dry eye. And why are we worried when you're talking about a cataract surgery in these patients is because you can have a altered microbial flora in their eyes. So you could end up with a little bit of increased risk of infection. You might have issues with IOL calculation. You might have issues with visibility during surgery. So you need to plan a lot more. Also, preoperatively, you might want to address the lids, make sure that there is no blepharitis, which is going to worsen your prognosis post-surgery. And you would want to try to correct the dry eye status as best as possible before you actually go ahead with the surgery. It would be preferable to get what is called as a DAS28 questionnaire, which the rheumatologist will be doing it, whether it is with CRP or ESR. And you would want to plan surgery only when the disease activity is low. So this patient presented with severe dryness with a completely +3 staining of fluorescein on all the three areas of the cornea, and wanted cataract surgery. So we first did a cautery because the Schirmer's was 0, and then after almost about a 3-month period, she underwent cataract surgery. Another patient with a very severe Sjogren's with a very low Schirmer's, low TMH, absent reflex secretion on fluorescein clearance, using lubricating drops every hourly. You cannot go ahead and do a cataract surgery directly in this eye. That is inviting disaster. So you would improve the ocular surface by doing a cautery, because when the Schirmer's is 0, even your cyclosporin and other medications might not work. You will have to do tear retention methods to improve the ocular surface health. Intraoperatively, when you're doing a cataract surgery in these eyes, there is always a debate whether you would want to do a scleral incision versus a corneal incision. We still do not have clear-cut answers, but suffice to say that your incision should be as small as possible, and your threshold for taking sutures, if there is any doubt of leakage, should be very, very less. You would want to hike up the lubricating drops in the post-operative period. You would want to defer NSAIDs. You would probably prefer a preservative-free antibiotic in the post-operative period. You could consider autologous serum or topical cyclosporin in the post-operative period if the patient can come for follow-ups and is clear about maintaining the the autoserum tears in a hygienic manner. So coming to certain other cases, so this patient was a 50-year-old patient who came with decrease in vision with mild discomfort, irritation in the eye. So if you look at the fluorescein stain, the cornea is not staining as much. The tear breakup was around 4 seconds. The TMH value, even on fluorescein, looks a little bit low. And when we investigated her further, the NIBU2 shows a value of around 3 and 5, and the TMH is significantly low. She was positive for RA. The Schirmer's was around 5 and 7, and there was reflex tearing which was present. So we started her on lubricants and cyclosporin and sent her to the rheumatologist to start her on medications for the RA. Her LipiView also showed a little bit of a low LLT values. So even in Sjogren's or non-Sjogren's patients, you tend to have an aqueous deficiency first, which then gradually progresses. So you might have a component of lipid deficiency also. So you need to evaluate the meibomian glands also in these patients. Another patient who presented with severe photophobia, severe filaments in the eye, unable to open the eye, and the Schirmer's value was 0, with severe inflammation. She was already on cyclosporin, on steroids. She was already under the care of a rheumatologist for her RA. So since the dryness was very severe, and in spite of steroids and cyclosporin, the inflammation was not coming down, we did a cautery for her. Post cautery, she improved. For the filaments, we also gave her acetylcysteine. She did well for about a 2-week, 3-week period, and then she came back with a redness in the left eye, and you can see the sterile infiltrates and the peripheral thinning in the eye. This actually indicates a systemic worsening. We referred her back to the rheumatologist, asked him to hike up the systemic immunosuppression in terms of systemic steroids and hike up the methotrexate, which he did, and you can see the condition kind of getting better. She is now maintained on methotrexate. She has occasional episodes of inflammation which gets managed with topical steroids for a short course of time. So it is important to understand that peripheral corneal melting, thinning, sterile infiltrates, scleritis, all these indicate that your systemic condition is not under control. And you need to be very clear to the rheumatologist that you want them to increase the systemic immunosuppression, because otherwise their eye will go for a toss. Another patient who had severe dry eye underwent cautery. She was under the care of the rheumatologist at that point of time. Then I had a cataract surgery. Who was doing fine. For whatever reason, she decided to stop her systemic medication. She ended up with a perforation, which sealed by itself as an adherent leucoma. And then the disease activity worsened, and we had to shift her from to HCQ, and then even that was not working. So then she had to be put on tofacitinib at this point of time. So it is important to talk to them that they cannot stop their medications unless the rheumatologist tells them. So it is important to have a detailed conversation with these patients regarding their eye and their systemic condition. Again, another patient who's actually a staff of ours who developed bilateral peripheral melts, thinning, corneal edema, sterile infiltrates, and in fact he worsened in the second eye. In spite of being on maximum topical and systemic medications in the first eye, we had to give him systemic cyclophosphamide, and then gradually kind of stabilized. So when you're seeing peripheral corneal melts, thinning, corneal edema, large defects which are not attributed only to the dryness, then you're looking at a worsening of his immune status, and you will need to get back in touch with your rheumatologist to hike up the systemic immunosuppression in these patients. So this patient, a patient of RA who presented with a perforation. I don't have the first picture. She underwent a patch graft in this area, and then she also had this pterygium, subsequently underwent a pterygium excision with a conjunctival autograft, and then she underwent a cataract surgery, maintaining about 624 vision with spectacles. With the contact lenses, her vision is improving to 6.9, but she's a 60-year-old lady who doesn't want to wear contact lenses. Another patient who's a one-eyed patient, other eye is NPL, presented with these peripheral melts, thinning, not amenable to systemic medications. She had a cardiac issue, so we couldn't even do an amniotic for the defect and the melt. So we just decided to temporarily use cyanoacrylate glue, at least to stabilize the eye, so that we don't end up with a perforation. And once her systemic condition got better, she underwent a cataract surgery subsequently, regaining 6.9 vision in that eye. Again, this is one of the last slides. When you have an RA patient with systemic involvement with scleral thinning, with peripheral corneal thinning, and the patient comes with a total cataract, then your surgery becomes a lot challenging. You need to decide whether you would want to go for a scleral incision, a corneal incision, or you would want to support the peripheral cornea using a rim of tissue first and then do a cataract surgery. So to conclude, in very severe ADD patients, less than 5, always rule out an autoimmune disease. Refer to the rheumatologist or internist whenever you're seeing a Schirmer's less than 5 and you're having a history suggestive of dryness of the mouth or systemic complaints. You explain the ocular condition, not just to the patient, but also to the rheumatologist, because we want them to know that we want them to control the disease activity, or we want them to give us a clearance for surgery. And you would want the clearance for surgery only when the disease activity is low. And we would need to monitor the side effects of some of the medications that they use in terms of HCQ, where you would probably want to do a HVF 10-2, SDOCT, multifocal ERG, or a fundus autofluorescence, and inform the rheumatologist in case there are macular changes which come in, because they would need to switch the medications. I would acknowledge my team at Shankar Nethralaya, and thanks, Nikhil, for the